to see all the how many different ways can we make an eye?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I thought that'd be kind of fun. Instead of trying to, complete a whole piece or whatever, I would just show some different techniques. So, but I'm going to start out by showing some slides of my work, and then I'll show you some pieces I have here in the studio, and then we'll get started with the clay. So we're going to share the screen here. Oh, wait, I think it's already up. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Do you see that?
We
can't
do,
hear me?
Jane. Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I
we
can
can
see
hear
it.
you, and we can see you. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So that's me in the studio. And I thought I'd start at the beginning. I was born in Tucson, and I just love this picture. That's, like probably a day after I came home from the hospital with my family, and it just, those draperies and everything, it just looks so mid-century. It's like, and these are my grandparents, my brother and I. So my parents are both from Illinois. My dad grew up on a farm in Wabash County, southeastern part of Illinois. My mom grew up in Jacksonville, Illinois, so she was a city girl, and they met at the University of Illinois. And he got his degree in agriculture and her degrees in home economics. And then this is me with my family, my husband David and my sons Hayden and Jesse. This is a show at Practical Art a few years ago. And they're all, grown and left the nest. So now this is my baby, my little Gracie girl. And so I do a lot of different things, and I've kind of grouped them. This first group are going to be the portrait pieces. And this one is a portrait of my dad. So that's kind of why I gave you the intro that he grew up on a farm, because this one is called Remembering Halloween. And it's a story that he used to tell me about Halloween and how he would go out with his buddies and his brothers to, have little pranks. And so one of the things they did is they snuck into their teacher's barnyard and painted the cow. And so I always loved that story and thought of this image. So that's him with the glaze on the paintbrush is glossy, so it looks like wet paint. And then this is a self-portrait. It's called Mother, Daughter, Artist, Wife. And I did this when my kids were little. And so have sort of become the rocking chair, like the symbol for, nurturing. And the house shape is a symbol for my husband. And then the tea set symbolizes the family. And that came from working with Seth Cardew. He came to, when I was teaching at Mesa Community College. Jeannie, you might remember this. Seth Cardew came out and did a workshop. So Michael Cardew's son, very famous potters. And he talked about a tea set being like a family. So the teapot is like the mother, I guess, and the sugar is like the grandma. And no, the teapot's the dad. Okay, the creamer is the mother, the sugar bowl is the grandma, and the cups are the children. And I just love that analogy. So this little tea set was one that I had as a child. So it's a found object, little china tea set with gold luster. And then this is the back view. So that's the mother, daughter, artist, wife, all my roles. This is the artist part, right? Where we're just putting ourselves out there. And then this is a portrait of a friend from Texas. Her name's Lunette, and the piece is called Gift Giver. It's basically life size. And this one is at the airport. Some of you might have seen it. I don't know if it's still in Terminal 3. Last time I was out there, it was out there. It was in 3. So, they move them around, and it's in their collection. This is called Growing Him for the World. And so you could really kind of see how I work in this one with the slabs. Most of the time, I use slabs, and I work in a technique that I call repoussé, which is actually a metalworking term. And that's where you have a flat sheet of metal and you're hammering it to make a volume. Can you still hear me? This is so weird because I can't hear anybody.
We can, Jane. You're
Okay.
doing great. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
you're just talking into a dark hole.
We're just captivated. That's
Yes.
all. You have us
Okay, good.
completely in your thrall.
All right, thanks. Good.
It's weird, but yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, it's just weird. You're used to being in front, in front of the room or whatever.
I know there's no feedback. It's so weird.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Just so I know you're there. You didn't disappear. Anyway, and I'll be showing that first thing today, how I kind of work from the inside out.
Stop.
And this one is called Home. This one's a little bit bigger piece. It's about 34 inches. Thinking about kind of when my kids left home and how that sense of home is with you and it's part of you, no matter where you are. And then this is a larger piece. This is about 50. I actually wrote it down. Let's see. 57 inches. Yeah, not quite 5 feet. And this is, I do a lot of yoga. I've been practicing yoga for about 20 years. And this is the Tadasana, just a very basic standing pose. And it's sort of the idea is connecting earth and sky and everything being in alignment. And I call it receiving blessings because those are little birds in her hands. And the color is represents the chakras. So it's the different chakra system of the body. It's basically a rainbow. So it's representing light. And then the base is kind of like the earth. And in talking about armatures, I'll talk a little bit about that later, but this one is made in 4 pieces plus the hands were separate. And so I built the base separately. There's holes in it. And then on the that bottom white part is wood. It has a thin set over it for texture and it's painted, but it has metal pipes that are screwed into a floor flange. So the pipes go up through the base and up into the legs and up to about chest height. So there's one that goes up each leg. And I built it on that. And then of course took it off to fire. And and then I put it back on that for display. And it separates right at the top of the leg at the hip there. And that piece just fits down sits on a flange, kind of like a lid would fit. And then the neck just, is angled and just slides down into the shoulder area. And so it comes apart. I did glue the hands in because of their positioning with the birds, but the rest of it all comes apart. And then this is a series of pieces that are figures and animals together. Well, a lot of them have that, but I kind of was focusing on that idea. relationship. This one's called Listen. This one is Edelweiss, Edelweiss, every morning you greet me. You might remember that from Sound of Music. And so when my kids were little, I would sing to them as they were going to sleep each night. And that I only really knew the words from Sound of Music songs. So that was the song I would sing to them every night. And so that's sort of what this represents. And then these are some little cups. They're little goblets that are actually portraits. So sometimes I'm working from photographs, and so it's more of a portrait. And sometimes I'm just, seeing who shows up as I work. And then this, I do horses, and you can see they're pretty abstracted, stylized, kind of influenced by Japanese Haniwa figures, which are all based on cylinders. And the color is all, in pretty much all of these earlier ones especially, it's layers of Duncan Easy Strokes, which are translucent underglazes. And just again, kind of talking a little bit about structure, the base is separate, and the way I attach it, the horse to the base is there's a dowel rod. There's a hole in the base and there's a dowel rod glued in there. And then just in one leg, I think it's the front leg. And then the horse, I sprayed that expanding insulation foam into it. And then it's kind of tricky. You have to make sure everything's covered. You don't get that on anything. But it just fills all around where oh wait, I left out something. Yeah, the wooden dowel rod is in the base, and then there's a PVC pipe, so hollow plastic pipe that's held in place in the leg of the horse with the foam. So the pipe just fits over the dowel rod. So it's kind of nifty. It just, comes apart really easily, but it makes it stable.
So the PVC pipe is like a sleeve.
Yes, right. Yeah. And then this horse is the model for the big horse sculpture. If you've been to the campus at Paradise Valley Community College, I did this big 12-foot tall piece out there as, David Bradley, some of you probably know David. David and I go way back. We actually were graduate students together at University of North Texas. And so he is always writing grants and doing really great things with his students. He travels a lot with them. And so this was a learning grant, and he invited me to come out and do a site-specific sculpture. He said, you can do anything you want. And ever since I'd started doing those horse ceramic pieces, they just looked so monumental. I always pictured them as being like large enough that you could walk under the belly. So I thought, all right, this is my chance. I'm going to do my big horse. And so I had to learn this basically building process. And I worked the first one semester just learning how to do all this, and all the planning, meeting with structural engineer and all the engineers and landscape architects and stuff at this college. And then I had a class where we actually built it. So I had about 10 students that helped me, and they all had wonderful experience and brought different things to the project. One man had an engineering background, and so it was really great. Everybody really added a lot. And so it's basically, I'll show you in a second how it's constructed. So it's in front of their Center for Performing Arts. And the landscape architect, it was their idea to put the front leg on the concrete so you can actually walk under it on the concrete. So inside is this big 4-inch pipe armature, and then over here on the other side, you can see the landscape crews installing it into these 4-foot deep concrete footings. So I worked with the structural engineer to design that. And then the styrofoam, that was made at a company in town that you give them plans and they put it into their CAD system, and the computer tells the hot wire how to cut the styrofoam. So it cuts like these basic cylinder shapes. But they were very basic, and we had to do lots of carving and lots of adding to actually sculpt it to what we wanted. So it's basically, you know, styrofoam over the steel armature, and then layers of fortified concrete. So it has a lot of polymer in the concrete and shredded fiberglass. And so there's layers of that troweled on by hand. Then the top layer was a white concrete. And then we did all this handmade ceramic tile. So that after the gray, about 2 layers of this gray, we attach the tile, and then the top white layer of concrete acts like the grout, as well as being the top layer. And then the bird is all mosaic, and he's there right now, there in this picture there, got the forklift and lowering the bird onto that metal armature that's coming out of the horse's back. And then it was painted with a concrete stain. And this is the crew on the day we did our, you know, celebration, and just barely got it done. We actually went back and gave it another coat of paint and sealer a month later. And then it has to be repainted. So the sun is really hard on that material. So the last time we painted it, November, a year ago. Yeah, oh wow, it's already been a year. And so this is David and I, and a couple of people from the clay club there helped us. And I had been using that stain. I switched to an outdoor exterior latex paint because we're wanting to pass this on to painters at the school. We don't want to keep doing this forever. And it's a much easier material to handle. Also will last, it will hold up longer in the sun. Oh, and you can see in the background here, each student did their own tile. The title of it is Lifelong Journey of Learning, and or Gateway to a Lifelong Journey of Learning. And so they each made their interpretation of their journey of learning and did a mosaic tile that is this pathway behind it. So that process of the concrete over the styrofoam has allowed me to do some bases. This piece, this little house piece, is the same process. It's the house is car styrofoam with concrete over it, and in this case river rock, and then the door and the windows are ceramic, and then the little deer up there is porcelain, and his legs are wood. And this is in ASU's CRC's collection. Hopefully it'll be out someday. And then this one, again, the base is the same thing. It's well, in this case, it's a soft brick, modified shape a little bit with styrofoam and concrete, but it's ceramic. It's with wood again from my carob tree in the backyard. And she's called Adolescence Revisited. It's 34 inches tall. And so with this one, I'd started doing clay over stainless steel welding rod. And that's what the next, most of the next ones are going to be. And so you can see, I wonder if this is, oh, it does blow up. Okay, are you seeing that larger?
We
Yes,
are.
we
Yeah.
are.
Okay. It only went that far. Anyway, so this arm has this stainless steel welding rod through the center of it. So as it shrinks, you know, it's separated, right? And then that rod runs through the shoulders and down into the wood to secure the wood. And then also down through the body, into the wood of the arm and down into the wood of the legs. And this one, is that it? Oh, here, okay. You can see some details. Drink of water. So the I have different sizes of welding rod, and I have smaller rod through the hair, and I just love how it cracks. And it's actually pretty secure. If something is pretty loose, I'll actually just glue it in after, after it's out of the firing. But it'll
Jane, are
pretty
Jane,
much
are you
stay
saying
there.
that you fire it on the rod?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I build it on the rod and let it crack and shrink as it dries, and then it moves around again in the bisque, and then it moves again in the glaze firing. And I really love that aspect of it because you never know quite what you're going to get. And you can anticipate, you sort of know where it's going to crack and how it's going to shrink, but I like the element of chance. And also, it's sort of my statement about it is it's a metaphor for life. We crack, we shrink, you never know what's going to happen. And you just accept it, and it's beautiful. It's like with this one, there wasn't this big gap in that heart area. Saying, oh, okay, I need to put something in there. So I, sculpted that heart in there. And I also like sort of partnering with the kiln. I mean, that's a beautiful thing about ceramics is that, the kiln gives you all these things that you can't just do. You have to have the heat. So this is one of the first ones in that series. She's called Energy, Innergy. And the base is, again, it's a styrofoam. No, not this one. This one is poured concrete. That's right. I poured concrete into a plastic container, and then I shoved a block of styrofoam into the middle of it so it wouldn't be quite so heavy. And then another horse, but instead of with those column type legs, it has the wire. And this one has a crackle glaze. Everything is fire to cone 5 in my electric kiln. And sometimes I will go back with, it's stainless steel welding rod is what I use. And then sometimes I'll go back with just a regular steel wire. It's like I wrapped the legs just to give them a little more bulk. And this base is wood with shingles glued onto it. And I really like this process, not just the idea about it, cracking and shrinking and the element of chance, but that it lets me build with really thin slabs and still have it hold together. And it lets me have it openings and have it hollow where you can see inside. And so a lot of times I'll put a really pretty glaze in there. And, to me, it's sort of like this one's called Spirit Horse, because it's sort of like looking inside the person, seeing the spirit coming through. And this one is Spirit Dog. This was made really as a memorial to a dog that I had. So he has little angel wings. And this one's in the studio here. I'll show you it too in person, well, through Zoom. This one's called Listening. And this was one I had made the framework, and then I waited quite a while before I actually built the horse. And I've learned a lot about anatomy and traditional figure sculpture by taking classes at Scottsdale Artist School. So if anybody's interested in really doing, studying anatomy and working with a figure, that's a wonderful place to take classes. We're really lucky to have them here in the Valley. Because most, universities and colleges, there's plenty of figure drawing, but not that much figure sculpture. And so with, live models. Anyway, so one of the classes that they had was actually sculpting horses, and we were able to go out to this beautiful farm out in, or ranch, more or less, out in Carefree, and actually sculpt the horses in the, in the yard from the stable. And so I worked from that. I was in oil-based clay. I used that as my model for doing this piece. And then another thing I like in the animal world are primates. This one's called Ponder. And this is Nature Nurture. And this was made, I think, around 2016, 2017, something like that. And it was kind of my response to our political climate, and wanting to introduce that feminine energy of nurturing, and caring for people. And then these are some little cups that are that same process of using the clay over the steel wire. It's kind of like a little puzzle, building these, just sort of trying to fit the clay in and out of the steel. There's some more. These are at the Ceramic Research Center when they had their store area. They don't have that now, but and the one on the left is actually a little from a portrait that I did of my son Hayden when he was about 7, I think. And so these two are, I also will often do a face and then make a plaster mold. And so these are how I build these little pieces, is I have a plaster mold of the face, so I can just fit that piece in there. And that was I had made a relief mold of the sculpture of Hayden. And the one on the right is called Concerned. And then this is a new piece. This one is over in Scottsdale at the library, at the Civic Center Library. So the one that's right by the Center for Performing Arts. And this one is called Her Story. So like history, but HER. And it's kind of a response to, I was making it when the Black Lives Matter protests were all over the news and really important. And so I didn't really set out to make a statement necessarily. Sometimes things just evolve because I'm responding to my environment. But I was looking at some photographs of African American, a man and a woman, and was kind of looking at that to sculpt this face. And then it started looking like a friend of mine's, a good friend of mine, her looked like her mother, who was about to turn 90. And I just thought, I know she has a lot of stories, she has slavery in her family history and all. And so it just seemed to be a really relevant kind of piece to do. And then this one was made at the beginning of the pandemic. It's called Self-Isolating. It's over at Practical Art Gallery, and which is actually right in my neighborhood. I live kind of near that area on Central. And this one is not a particular person. This is just a face that I created. And then in this case, the steel wire was not fired in place. I added it afterwards. So I just knew I wanted it in there and left the holes. And then this one is a whole different process and way of working. And I'll show you that as one of the ways to do eyes, is it's not the repoussé. This was built solid. And I started it in a workshop with Tip Tolan. And if you know her work, she works solid over an armature. So that's how this one was built. And it's called Under the Surface. It's basically life size. And then that's a little wooden boat that's sitting on her head. And then the last couple here are a whole nother series of work that I do with a good friend of mine. I've been collaborating with Becky Fraze. She lives up in Tacoma, Washington, and we've been friends since we were in art school together at ASU. And we started collaborating in about 2012. We did a show at a gallery up there when Ensika was up in Seattle in 2012. And then we've had 3 shows at Practical Art, and we also had a show in the airport here in Phoenix. And this is one of my favorite pieces that we've done. It's called Little Dancer. And I'm looking to see how tall she is. 39 inches, yeah, so she's pretty big. So the torso and head are clay, and then we do lots of assemblages. Everything's pretty much an assemblage. So there's lots of found objects, wooden, table legs or chair legs, wooden shoes, metal. And Becky's a painter, but she does a lot of assemblage, like assembled pieces into her paintings. And so she painted this base. It's a cradle board that's made for, having a stiff background to paint on. And it's called The Composer, because her husband's a composer and music professor up in Tacoma. And so I gave her the little bird, and then she created this. This typewriter is, I think, was her husband's fathers or grandfathers or somebody. It's a really neat little typewriter. And you can see it's sheet music in there. And then this, Becky uses a lot of musical instruments and cases and so forth in her work. And my older son's a musician and professional musician, and my other son also was a musician too in high school and so forth. So music's important in our family as well as hers. So it kind of connects us. And this is called No Strings Attached. And you can see this guy and this one. Really fun process. I took stuffed dolls, basically cloth dolls, dipped them in layers of porcelain slip, which I learned from a workshop with Lisa Clegg. And so you keep dipping until you get a shell built up. And then when you fire it, of course, all that burns out. And then the faces are photo transfers. And then this one's in a show at the Shemer right now. It's called Reclaimed. So they call it, instead of recycling, upcycled materials, they call it. Anyway, our last show was called For Mothers, and it was about, our mothers, our aunts, our grandmothers, and we both had a lot of things that we kind of inherited from them. And so we tried to use some of those pieces. So the jewelry box was my mother's, and the crochet skirt was off a collar. This is a photo decal, so it's fired on. That was a picture of my great grandmother. There's little bone buttons that are used for the joints on the shoulders and hips, and those my mom collected buttons. And then this is the last one. This is the image as Becky's grandmother. And that is it. Let's see, slide forward to exit.
That was beautiful, Jane. It's nice to see all your work and start to hear about the multimedia that you mix in. So
yeah, they all have stories. I've tried not to make it too long. but it's hard not to tell you some of the stories. Okay, and I don't know how you want to do questions, but I'm fine if you want to ask questions, or I think you're monitoring a chat too, right?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and monitor the chat. So
Okay.
if you want to go
How do
ahead
you
and
wanna do
unmute
it?
and ask questions, that's great. We would just ask that you afterwards you immediately remute your mics. Otherwise, we start getting a lot of background noise. Or if you want to go ahead and throw a question up there on chat, I'll go ahead and let her know what your questions are on chat as well.
Oh, wait, I need to show you the stuff that's in here. That's right. Because I want to show you what I'm going to start making. So let's see. Well, I'll start with this one since we just did. I showed you the pieces with Becky. This was also from that Four Mothers show, but it was not, the face is not a decal, and it's not one of our Four Mothers. We had done a bunch of other faces earlier, so this is one of my other faces I had sculpted and then did clay. But like the textiles are, things from our mothers. Those little plastic elephants were things my mom had, her buttons. This is another thing in that show. We did these transfers onto cloth and then embellished them with embroidery. This is another one that's kind of in that series. Using, that was an old doll dress.
On the previous one, what was the hair made out of?
Oh, I love her hair. We call her Harriet. It's embroidery floss, just like a big wad of it. We said, oh, she needs something up there. And Becky just picked up this wad of tangled up embroidery floss and we plopped it up there. Oh, perfect.
How fun.
Which is a lot of how when we're working together, like she works in her studio, I work in mine, and then we send things back and forth. And then if we've got a show, usually I'll spend a week there and she'll spend a week here. And so when we're together, a lot of times that's when it's very spontaneous and we just start pulling from things in the studio and putting them together. It's really fun. That's why we've been doing it for so long.
Yeah, because Mike wanted to know on chat, Jane, how do you plan your work? Are you a big sketcher or do you just jump right in with clay? I know it's probably different when you're collaborating, but what's your process?
Most of the time I will sketch something. Not always, but anyway, I was thinking I could even show you a sketch, but I won't do that right now because I don't want to change positions. But a lot of times I'll have an idea I'm working with, like say for instance that picture I showed you of while I'm talking, I'll show you this one. The little deer on top of the house. That started with a sketch because I kind of try to think about what I'm feeling at the time, kind of what I've been ruminating about, and then is there an image that can express that? And so I just started thinking about, that's called Secure in the Wilderness. And I was thinking about my sons being out, having left home and being in the wilderness, right? But still feeling secure. And I just thought of this little cabin in the woods, and so I sketched that and then I made the piece. And it sometimes will be pretty similar, or sometimes it changes a lot and it becomes clay. So this is that one I showed you with the photograph. And this surface is really cool. This is what I've been experimenting with. This was on that head that's the one that had the wire across the top. This is, I've been kind of experimenting with different combinations, but it's kaolin. Well, you spray the wet clay, like leather hard or wetter clay, mist it, and then sift dry kaolin on top, and then mist the kaolin, and it starts cracking. you know, like dried mud, right? And then there's some glaze in parts of it too. And I've started combining it with so a little bit of Gersley borate so it sticks better, because some of it does flake off. Anyway, I'll show you a few more things that are here. This is in that cup series. This one's a little basket, but it's basically the wire armature is vertical lines, and then I kind of took slabs of clay and wove it in between the wire, and then you kind of curled it, you know, at the top. And this one is a piece that was actually kind of a therapy piece right after my mom passed away. This blue glass was a powder and perfume container she had on her dresser. And here she is in her boat, but she's going away with her red shoes. Do you see the red shoes in there? And this is just a basic slab piece. This was a demo actually from a class that I teach at Mesa Art Center, figure sculpture class. This is a little bird. He's called Birdman with Issues. So kind of combining the bird and the human. That hand in the head's another demo piece. And then this is what I'm going to show you first is the repoussé. That's a little mask. And then when you do it with the, for an animal, this little rat guy, it's the same thing, but I add the whole muzzle area is a separate added on piece. So that'll make more sense when I show it in a minute. And then this is the last one. This is a big piece. I wanted to try this metal process, but getting bigger. So this one, I think it's 34 inches with the hair. It's called Haywire. So it's a new piece, kind of expressing, you know, the last few months being pretty haywire. And, but she's trying to hold it together here. She's stitched together and her little hand is, you know, made separately and then wrapped on. And then I use a lot of these underglaze transfers. Some of you might be familiar with those. They're really cool.
Yeah.
And the back.
It's amazing.
Okay. So I'm gonna switch.
I love that.
Camera. Thank you.
You know,
Yeah, I'm
I
excited.
love your titles, Jane.
Yeah, me too.
Your pieces are so wonderful and beautiful conceptually. I love everything about them, but your titles feel very clever and fun. And I wonder if you have fun with that when the piece is all done. Do you know the title before you go in, or is that something that you get to play with afterwards?
Usually I might have an idea of what it's about, but I usually make up the title afterwards. Yeah. Like that hair, you know, that I didn't know I was going to do that. I knew I was going to have hair because I left holes. And let's see. Yeah, I did. I actually fired that hair in there, but it was straight. It was just sticking out everywhere. And then I got, oh, I can wrap it around a pencil. And, you know, then it really came alive. And that's, I think, when I titled it Haywire. Yeah.
I think that's kind of how we feel during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that piece was the perfect summary of the year.
I haven't, you know, been to the hairdresser this whole time. My hair just keeps getting longer. Okay, so I probably have not enough time to show you everything, but I'm going to show you a few things. I thought it was kind of important to just show you the work, actually. So I'm going to make a slab. It doesn't need that big. And I just sort of wanted to show you how I do it. I know everybody knows how to make slabs. And But I don't use a slab roller because I want more control over my shape of my slab. And so this might jiggle the table. Let me see. That's not bad, right? So I use, you know, these big hefty mallets, and this one's, I think Chinese clay art has these. That's where I get my my underglaze transfers to. There's other companies that have those transfers too. But usually when I go to the Asika conference, I load up in the vendor section. So I'll just get this, I just cut it right off the block because, you know, this is all de-aired, and get it going. And then I'll throw it some. And actually, I like to mist the table a little bit so you don't have as much dust, because this has canvas on it, this table.
So Jane, Marjorie wants to know, your surfaces, they have kind of that matte satiny finish. Are you using stains, glazes? You said something about, do you do like a wash of Gersley borate? How are you getting your surfaces?
Yeah, well, most of it depends on the piece, but the ones that have the underglaze, you know, it's these Dunkin' Easy Strokes, you know, the little bottles, and they're translucent. And so I always use, pretty much always use Cone 5 B Mix, smooth, no sand. And I found that these Easy Strokes, depending on the color, some will give you a little bit of sheen with no glaze on top. Some will be more matte, but I fire them to Cone 5 and they soak in and give you a nice rich color. But you can layer them, you know what, so I usually will do first layer, I'll make, I'll put it on, I'll water it down a little bit, paint it on, sponge it off so it's just in the low spots. So it's a stain. And I work dark to light. So that's, let's say I'm doing blue. So I would do dark blue first. And then I'll come back and sort of brush a couple different blues on top. And then a lot of times that's it. I just fire it to Cone, that's on bisque. And then I'll just fire it to Cone 5. And then where I want shine, I'll come in with a gloss. And so that's what I do for the ones that have a lot of underglaze. Let's see, like this one. Let's see, the rat. So there's no, the only glaze is on the eyes. But
So your underglazes just get that nice little sheen on them all by themselves.
yeah, depending on the color. This one has more sheen because I know that the color taupe, you know, it's got more flux in it. And so it has more sheen. But so I test them all out, you know, I have my little samples. So I know which ones are going to have more sheen and which ones are not. And just put gloss.
Do your colors all hold up to Cone 5, 6 with those Easy Strokes?
There's a couple that change, purple and pink. I'm just hanging this guy back up. So okay, here's two pinks. Let's see.
Yeah, we can see those.
Okay, so that top one, that'll hold. That's called Petal Pink, 61. But Pecos Pink, you can see it turned brown. Right. And you might have hints of pink where it's thicker, but so you just test them. And then another interesting one, I use it as a gray. This one, this is called Pueblo Purple. At Cone 5, it's mostly gray. But you have a little bit of blue coming through. It's really a beautiful gray, but it's not purple.
Yeah, because they were originally designed for low fire, so you really do have to test them at mid-range, right?
But those are really the only two that change very much. Purple.
Oh, good.
most all your blues, your greens, yellows, even reds now, because the encapsulated cadmium, everything is fine at 5. And when you go to Marjan's, they have a sample of what it looks like at 5. We have a big plate, you know, with kind of like pieces of pie. It's over there by the Easy Strokes. But it's better to sample, you know, to test your own and keep track of it yourself. However, I'm very dismayed because I got an email from Marjan. Some of you may have gotten it too if you get their newsletter. Mako bought Duncan, and they're not going to make all the colors anymore. And I'm like, Indian summer, I use that all the time for skin, and they're not going to make that. So Marjan said they would forward our request. So I wrote him a letter. I said, I want these colors. So
You have to go buy up a case of it before they go out of stock.
That's the thing. I'm gonna have to go buy a bunch of it and hope it doesn't all dry out. I don't use those maybe as much as I used to, but because the other thing, let me get this on the paper before I tell you about the glazes that I also use. That's the you know, what I mostly do with Easy Strokes is either no glaze or just gloss like on eyes or teeth or whatever. And then I'll tell you what's on some of these other ones. Glaze with copper. Okay, so to make like that mask with that tourism woman, I want to have a little mound of paper. And it seems kind of really simplistic, but I do have a technique for wadding the paper and making the mound. So I just wad it up first. Get it all crunchy. And then I open it back up and I turn all that stuff to the inside. So that you have a smooth surface against your clay. Because the B-mix, you know, it's like porcelain. It's going to pick up any little bumps and stuff that you have. So, and then you can tape it a little bit if you want to. Just to hold your, basically you're making a little hump mold. So whatever, you know, however much paper you need for the size that you want, we'll just keep it not too big. And I'm going to cut this down a little bit. Let's see. And this is about, usually I work maybe 1/4 inch thick, but if you're just starting this technique, I would say err on the thicker side, maybe 3/8 of an inch thick, because you have to stretch the clay. And if you have it too thin, you won't, you'll just start going through it. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller for this. And then I'll drape it over here. And then usually I go ahead and turn it over the paper. Okay, I don't want it. So we have kind of a face of a shape. You can see about how big it is. Okay, and the paper inside. Okay, so my husband's going to be my cameraman, I think. And I'm going to move my clay over here where I can get to it. Just set this here for now. That out of there. So you will switch views here for the camera. And first, I'm just gonna just stand for this part. and stretch this out a little bit. So I sort of sneak my hand under here between the paper and the clay. And I'm gonna stretch. So I'm using like my hand like this. The clay's going against my fingers. And I'm stretching out the center of it. And then pulling that to the side a little bit. Because I want to make sure that this base is not just flat, right? It's going to be somewhat flatter than a, you know, if I was sculpting solid or something, but I want to give it a little dimension. Sometimes I'll even add paper to it if I need to. There. Okay, so now it's a little bit more rounded. And so then I'll decide where I want the eyes. And, you know, if you're doing a regular head, the eyes are basically in the center of your skull from your crown to your chin. But, you know, you can put them wherever you want, right? So I'm going to say I'll put them about right here for now. And I'll just kind of use this as a marker. Just put my thumbs there. Okay. And then I'm going to make the nose. So I'm sneaking my hand under there again. And I'm going to I'm using my middle finger and I'm going to push out and come down. And I don't know if you can see, the clay does get little surface cracks, but I really like that. It depends on the figure. You know, if it's an older man, then I might just try to keep a lot of that to give texture to the skin. If it's this courtesan figure, then I'd probably go back and smooth it out. Then I take my thumbs and go around the side like this to define that nose a little bit more. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of the cracks for this particular one. Now I want to mostly focus on eyes, but I think I have time to show you on this one a little bit. I'll do the nose a little bit more and the mouth too, because it'll be a good lead into how I do the eyes. So you have a basic nose shape. It's very flat, but this is like perfect for an Asian face because the space between the bridge of the nose and the eyeball is very small on an Asian face. That's one reason I like doing those courtesan figures is with this technique, because this technique kind of lends itself to that. And you can add a little bit. So a lot of times I'll start with this repoussé type of form and then I'll add clay to it. And so I'm going to add a little bit to the ball of the nose. We just put a little water, a little wet clay, and I'm adding it on to the tip, to the ball of the nose. So there's kind of like, if you think of the nose in three parts, the main form, which is kind of like a cone, like a pyrometric cone, right? Kind of a three-dimensional triangle or pyramid shape almost. It's got sides and the top. And then it has the ball. So if you literally add that on top, it'll help define that end of the nose. And then the third part is the nostrils, of course. And you can add a little bit of clay on each side, depending on how wide you want that nose to be. Is this working okay?
Yeah.
I'll sit down in a minute.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, I was thinking, I'm trying to talk to my cameraman here. We tried this yesterday. And I think I'll I'll sit down for this part and I'll just put it like this. Is that gonna work for you?
Yeah.
For the camera?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna shape that nose a little bit. This is just a wooden modeling tool from Sculpture House. They have some of these at in town at Reynolds Advanced Materials. They're over in kind of North Tempe, north of the 202 off of McClintock. Because at
Jane,
Marjan,
Marjorie wants to know if you wedge your clay first or to use it straight out of the bag.
For this type of thing, I'll use it straight out of the bag. What I'll do usually is, drop my bag on the floor on each side to kind of, wake it up, loosen it up a little bit. And I don't usually cut right, if it's a new bag, I don't usually use that top layer because that's usually sort of dry. So I'll cut that off and then I'll cut a piece from below. So anyway, this tool is a really nice little wooden tool that, at Marjan's, it's all mostly pottery tools. You don't really find sculpture tools. This is hardwood made by Sculpture House, but you can find some of these at Reynolds. They don't always have the same ones. Okay, now kind of a fun way to do this nose. I'm just putting some water to smooth out my tool marks. Is I will just take my knuckle, my little finger, and push it up there to make the nostril. And you kind of instantly have the nostril defined. And then also it pushes the clay up into the top of it, top of the nostril. And then, depending on the face you're doing, you can always add more clay if you want a bigger nose. But that's enough for a little nose. Okay, and now the mouth, what I'm going to do is push this out a little bit more because that mouth, sculptors talk about the mouth barrel. It's very round. It looks, our eyes kind of fool us because it's foreshortened form. From the front, it looks flat, but if you look like from underneath, this should be a horseshoe shape. And again, this technique, it's a little bit flatter, but I do want to bring it out some. So I'll do that from the back side. And then I'm going to draw a line where the lips come together. So where the upper and lower lip come together. So I am going to just putting a little water on here with my finger. I'll decide where that is. So let's say it's the center of the upper lip is about right here. Would that make sense? Top, yeah. Okay.
Let's change perspectives.
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of straight on. You want me to turn? I can be
No, it's your hand.
right here. Oh yeah, that's right. You can see more from the left. Okay, so that top lip in the middle, it curves down, and everybody's lips are a little different, just like everything. But if you had a nice curvy full lip, that would curve. They call that the milk tooth. And then the bottom lip, just to the sides, it matches that. It curves down, for that to fit into. And then there's a volume on the sides of your lower lip. So I'm going to curve that part up. Okay, and then it's going to go into the corner of the mouth. And I usually put a little sort of smiley edge on the corner of the mouth. So that line.
Can you turn it this way? There we go.
That is my line where the top and bottom lip meet. Okay. Now I'm going to cut through that. And I'll start in the middle and cut that curve. And then I'll start on the outer edge until they meet up. And this is a pretty thin bladed knife. They have these at Marjan's. I think they're cutout tools or something, the little triangle. I'm going to go over it one more time just to make sure it's going all the way through. Okay. Now I'm going to open it up from the back. And so I will get my hand in there. And just kind of open it a little bit. And then before I do a lot more, I'm going to get it wet. I want to make sure that that cut line doesn't have all those little burrs on it. So this is an acrylic brush. I like to use these with water. They're great, especially on the B mix if you don't have any sand. So it behaves really nicely with water. And okay, so I'm going to open the bottom lip first. I'll put my thumb of my other hand on the outside right below the lip, just to have something to push against. And then I'll open it out.
Can you see that opening okay?
Yes, we got a beautiful view.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
great.
good, great. And then the top lip, you don't have to open it too much. I'll just kind of get in there and sort of curl my finger. To open it a little bit. And then from the outside, I can just press to create the peak of the lips a little bit more. And we'll put the little philtrum in here. Okay, and then the lower lip's a little shorter than the upper lip. So I will just tuck it in right there on the corner. And you have a little mouth. And the eye is done in a similar way. So I'm gonna kind of create a cheekbone a little bit here. And I'm just on the inside, just taking my finger and pressing out. It's gonna go here and off to the side. Your cheekbone sticks out the most right here, kind of towards that outside, about 3/4 outside of your eye. Then it's gonna goes all the way over to your ear. So we're creating an eye socket a little bit right now. Okay, and so then we'll push out the brow some. Okay, should probably can see that. Create a little bit of jaw. And the other thing, well, there's just too much to show you in the amount of time, but you know, there's also going to be a little bit of a nasolabial fold here where your cheek meets that mouth barrel. And you want to put it in, and then depending on how much you erase, it'll look older or younger, right? Depending on how much that crease shows up. But it's great for helping to define your cheek.
Are you pushing on the newspaper or on the clay?
On the clay. Yeah, my hand is between the paper and the clay. Okay, now I'm going to do the eye. And I'm going to push it out a little bit from the back. Okay, it's a little crease. We don't want a crease right in the middle of the eyeball. Put a little water. Okay. And then I'm going to draw a line as if the eyes are closed. So it's where the two eyelids meet. So that's kind of one reason I wanted to show you the mouth first. It's similar thing. You know, I drew where the two lips come together. So this is going to be where the top and bottom eyelid come together. So first, it's going to line up on this face with, the eyes are going to start vertically lined up with the outside of the nose. Okay. And the edges of the mouth line up with the middle of the eye on this particular face. That's kind of just a standard to compare other faces to. Okay, then we go straight line for the tear duct, and then I'm going to curve it. And eyes are approximately an eye width apart. This one looks like it's a little bit further. Let's see. So you draw first to make sure that they're, you know, pretty symmetrical.
Do we see that?
So it kind of looks like it's asleep or she's asleep. I think it's a girl. I'm not sure yet. Now I'm going to cut that. So we'll cut a straight line and then we'll cut the curve. Straight line and then the curve. Okay. And then this is going to be sort of the Asian eye more. So I'm not going to have a real deep crease in there. I'm going to do the lower eyelid first, just like I did the lower lip first. So I'll put my finger here and push out. So your clay needs to be fairly wet to, you know, be able to maneuver it like this, manipulate it, bend it this much, but not super soggy or it won't hold its shape. Okay, I can see it's like she's totally lost her nose. So I'm gonna do that before what time is it? 1:20. Okay, we're still okay. I'm going to add a little more wet clay to that area before I make the eyes, because that'll mess it up.
So you are supporting behind where you're putting the clay in?
Well, the paper's there, but I have my hand on the paper.
Okay.
So I'm supporting it, yes.
Jane, did
Otherwise,
you do,
yeah, you need that resistance.
Jane, did you do your master's work in ceramics or sculpture?
In ceramics. But I was making, like my MFA show was life-size mixed media figures. So they had clay faces and hands and sometimes shoes or something, but their bodies were PVC pipe and then stuffed with like a cloth body with stuffing, kind of almost like a big doll, right? And then
So you've
dressed in
always
real
worked in
clothes.
mixed media.
Yeah, I have. But clay's always been, I mean, all my training is clay. But and I make pots. I learned how to do all that and throw on the wheel. And of course, when you teach, you do all that. Because I've taught at, I don't know if you know my teaching background, but after I went to North Texas, I was full-time at established a ceramics program at a college in Fort Worth for 5 years, and then taught in Dallas ceramics, and then since we came back to Phoenix, then I've been at various community colleges. I was at MCC for 14 years, taught ceramics and established their clay sculpture program and beginning ceramics. Let's see, Phoenix College for 5 years, taught ceramics. And then the last was Glendale. I was there 10 years. So, I'll teach pottery and all different techniques, but I think of myself as a sculptor first. And sometimes mixed media, sometimes all clay. Okay, a little bit better nose going there.
Can we see looking it straight on?
And from the side, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'll add to that brow later too. But so you see, it's kind of a combination of, the repoussé gets the basic thing going, and then I add on where I need to. And this is just an inventive face, but if I'm looking at a portrait, then of course I'm more specific, and I probably do more adding on or modeling. Okay, so now I'm going to open this eye up, and I'm going to kind of clean up that cut edge and get my finger in there. I pretty much did the lower lid. I will, well, let's see, we can go ahead and define under it a bit more with the tool. And then it's kind of like a hinge. I just sort of am going to pull my finger like this to open up the eye. And then from the outside, I'll push it up a little bit.
She woke up.
Time to wake up, dear. Okay, and then if it's, I might just only leave it like that if it's, well, I didn't really do the tear duct like an Asian eye. Here, we'll just put the crease in it. There, okay. Then I'm actually going to cut this part out. So I only have the eyelid. And I will thin it out on the lower lid as well. Because what I'm going to do for the eyeball is put a ball in, a half of a ball actually, from the back. And I need to be able to get that ball up close enough to this. Like, can you see how thick this is right here?
Not really, there's a lot of shadow.
Okay, well,
I
it's
can
the
see it.
thickness of the
Yeah.
clay. The clay was like, 1/4 inch, and that's too thick. You have to cut that out. And I'm doing it, just on the inside. I'm not disturbing the outside surface of the clay. I'm just thinning that out so I can get that eyeball right up there next to the eyelid. Otherwise, it would be, too far back into your head. Okay. Now let me check the bottom here a little bit. Oh yeah, so I don't forget teaching. Back to that. So I'm not at Glendale anymore. I kind of decided to focus on my work more. I'd somewhat retired, but you never really retire when you're an artist, which is wonderful. But I still love to teach. So I teach in normal times, I teach a figure sculpture class at Mesa Art Center and also at Shemer Art Center. They're both once a week. And so right now, there aren't any in-person classes at Mesa. They're supposed to start in January, but we'll see. And I teach a virtual class through the Shemer. And the next one's going to start in January. I think it's on the 7th. And that's been really fun to do. Okay, so I'm just cleaning it up and getting it ready to put the ball in there. And now normally I would be doing the same thing on this eye, like I do it here and then do it over there. So it comes out more symmetrical, but I don't want to take the time to do that right now. So I just want to get this a little bit less bumpy. And it's kind of wet. If I was not doing a demo, I think I would probably let this dry a little bit before I would put the eyeball in. Okay, so we're going to make the eyeball. So you just want nice wet clay, and I'm rolling it into a ball. And just make sure it's big enough to kind of fill that space. Okay, then I'm going to cut it in half. Excuse me. With my wire, because there's less resistance with the wire than if you cut with a knife. And we don't want it to flatten out too much. So you have to kind of try to get it in the middle, hold it gently and pull. And then you'll have one for each eye. And I found it's actually, I like to scoop a little bit of that out of there. Like you're making a deviled egg, right? Just to have less resistance. And then I'll put a little bit of water on the edge. And then you just have to kind of carefully take the paper out and put a little water in there. And then slide it into place. Oops. Got a gap. A little bit more. Okay.
Switch sides again.
So it's in there. Now I'm going to put my paper back in. And of course it, comes forward because you're putting pressure on it. So now we'll just kind of put it back into place. And we'll get that crease in there a little bit more. You can take the tool and lay that eyeball down, that eyelid down a little bit on it. Push up into that tear duct. Okay. Oh, pretty good. We can add a brow. I like this little tiny rib. It's a Mud Tools, and it's got little tiny teeth. I really like it for blending.
What is that tiny rib made out of? Is it metal rib?
It's metal. Yeah, it's flexible metal rib,
Okay.
Stainless.
just like your regular serrated rib, but it's just a different shape and it's smaller, and it's a Mud Tools. So Michael Sherrill's company. I think, is his show still up at ASU Art Museum? Or was it only?
I don't get. Hopefully, you got a chance to see his
Hopefully you
show.
saw Michael Sherrill's show at ASU Art Museum. It's, wow, one of the best shows I've ever seen there. It's fantastic. It's in the main museum, the one on 10th and Mill. And I felt really safe when we went there, because you have to get a timed entry ticket. I mean, it's free, but you go online and get your timed entry. And we saw like 2 other people in the museum when we were there, and which was kind of nice too. It's like you have the whole place to yourself practically. Just fabulous show. And it's clay and bronze and glass. If you don't know his work, it's beautiful, organic forms.
I was just looking at the website, and they have Art in Focus highlighting women artists from the collection through May 29th. Look to Nature, Toshiko, I'm going to mispronounce this, Takatsu.
Ketsu, yeah, that's the one at the CRC. It's very good
Okay.
too. I think Michael's might be over.
Yeah, I think it is. And there's also For the Animals, Chanya Kandiani.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's what's currently showing.
I think his had been extended, because of COVID.
Yeah, but I think his is over.
But
I think you're right.
it's gone. Yeah. Anyway, I could build up more here. And then the last part is this might work better on my other eye. But you want to add this little crease in here. I'll just kind of lay it in there. This is better to do, and this is maybe not quite so wet, but that's a little crease, that's that little tissue under your brow. Like on children, of course, is really big. And usually as we age, it gets a little bit more defined. Okay, and then we want to have a little bit of a line where these come together. And also, I'll turn it here a minute. I'll kind of suggest the eyebrow up here. Okay. You want to have a little line for your tear duct. So the tear duct's like a little triangle right down here.
Can you turn it towards us?
Yeah, let me draw the line first. Actually, I have the wrong glasses for this. This really detailed stuff. That's better. There. Okay. So now I'm going to show you another way to do an eye. Set that guy over there. And let me unwrap this one. Drink some water. Oh, this reminds me of I didn't finish talking about the glazes, but like on the skin for this, David, can you shoot it up here?
Mm-hmm.
This courtesan figure, you know, it has the easy stroke painted on, sponged off first, and then a little bit more put on for cheeks, and I painted the eyes and the hair and all that. And then on the face, I like this Crackle Matte Clear Glaze. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice matte, but like one coat, maybe two if they're not thick. You can see through it and you'll see your underglaze just fine, but it'll be matte. And then on the skin, on this B-Mix, it'd be different on other clays, but on the B-Mix, if I paint about 4 coats, it starts to get a little more white. You know, most clear mattes get milky if you get them too thick. And so that's what's on there. I don't know if the person was asking about that. That's what's on this one too. It's the clear matte. But on this one, first I put a wash of copper carbonate, just straight copper carb powder mixed with water, painted in just not over here or on the face, but just painted on these edges. And then I sponged it, and I didn't sponge as much here. And then I painted this clear glaze, or it'd be better to spray it really, unless, yeah, just paint that on and then spray it if you can. So, and this one's the same thing. It's the copper and then the clear matte, and clear matte on top of these transfers. So those are the ones I use most of the time for like skin. Okay. Now, I don't know if we're gonna need higher or lower. So this is something I kind of dreamt up for teaching so that you could work vertically and not have a pipe armature. So I ordered all these wig heads, and I had the students glue them onto a board.
Look the direction I'm going. Bad
Oh,
light.
sorry.
It's okay.
Over here?
Yeah.
Okay. So that it's glued onto the board, and then we literally like cut the whole front of this face off, the nose and the mouth. And you can just use a serrated knife, works fine. And then we carved out the eye sockets. And then this is only, I'm doing not the whole head. I'm only going to end up with the mask. But okay, that's all I need to do with that. So then I put pretty thick slabs, like 1/2-inch thick slabs. I did one on the top that goes back here. And this is just to hold it onto the wig head. And then I did one in the front. And, you know, and there's a plastic bag over the styrofoam. Okay, just put it in a bag. And then this is a slab. This is a couple slabs just covering it. And then I pushed in on my eye sockets, and I've added some clay to the cheekbones and the chin a little bit. It does, because of the weight of it, it does kind of want to slump down. So I put a little prop under here while I'm working. But that's why this is up here and it goes back to kind of keep some more weight going to the back. And then when I'm done, see, I'll just cut it off. And I'll show you what I did over here. I'll have a face. So this could be a finished thing that you hung on the wall. With this one, what I did is I made a mold. So I made a plaster mold of it. And that's like those little cups that I showed you where I had little molds. This is the mold that I used to do the big piece over there, the haywire piece. So I just was scaling it up. And so I just showed you this because I thought, you know, you might want to try this at home. And it's really just an armature, you know, this wig head. And it's just so you can work vertically. Because, you know, with the mask, you're either working flat or you're kind of diagonal. And it's nice to work vertically, like if you put it on a sculpture stand and you stand up or something. Okay, so I think because of the lighting, David, I better go like this. It's really dark over here.
Yeah, it's dark over there. Which how are you gonna do it?
I like to do the right just because it's easier. So I've already kind of got a brow and a cheekbone and a little bit of mouth barrel in. I made a nose. And then this is how Tip Tolan does her eyes. And hers are solid, right? With pieces on metal armatures. But this eye socket is pretty deep. So from the bridge of the nose back here, it can be like 1 inch to 3/4. And the eye socket, it's kind of the shape of like those aviation, is that what they call those glasses?
Aviators.
Aviators, you know, like they have Biden always in. It kind of angles down a little bit here. Okay.
Hand it away.
So I've already done that. I've already carved that in. And then it has to be really flat at the back. So I take a tool, a wooden tool that's squared off, and flatten this. And it can actually angle further in a little bit towards the bottom. And it's going to also angle that way a little bit, this plane right here. And then just like I did on the other one, I made a ball, I cut it in half with the wire, and then I place it in there. So there's a lot of prep to getting all that eye socket.
Can you turn it towards
Right.
us real quick?
And then before you attach it, you want to stand above and look down and make sure that both of these eyeballs are sticking out the same, because it's really easy to get one deeper than the other one. So you would want to check it at that point. Let's see what time it is. Okay, now I'm going to attach those.
Yes.
And so my clay's really wet. You could use slip, but it's pretty wet. So I can get a slurry just with some water. And we'll go ahead and score a little bit. This is a more traditional way to do an eye, where you carve out the socket and you put the eyeball in there. Tip is very meticulous because, you know, her work, if you know her work, it's like super realistic. Okay, so it's in there now. I'm gonna fill in. So I'll just add a little water. Basically making little coils. Scoot my chair. Can you see?
I can't tell.
Looking
Everyone
good.
see okay?
Yeah.
Can you
it's
guys
looking
see?
good.
The light's okay and all? Okay,
Yeah.
all right, good. So I'm just kind of like first filling in some of that hollowed out eye socket.
While you're doing that, Jane, can I just ask on that first eye that you did? So I'm assuming that you're going to go back later and you're going to actually paint in the iris and the pupil, correct?
Oh yeah, good question. Yeah, you know, traditional sculptors will carve out the iris, right, to create a shadow. But since as ceramic artists, we have color. So yes, after it's bisqued, I'll paint in the iris and the pupil. And then usually I put a clear glass glaze on top of the eyeball.
To give it kind of that wet look.
Yeah. Mhm. Make it shiny. Okay, I think I'm ready to actually put the eyelid on. All right, so we're going to do the bottom lid just like we did on the other, but do the bottom first. And I'll take a little coil and then I'll get it a little bit wet and flatten it out some so it's not round. Also, it's got a few little creases, kind of gets that out there. Okay, and we'll put a little water here. Now, your brow and your eyelids are going to kind of go along this line. So the brow's here, and then as you angle in, you'll have your upper lid and then your lower lid should be behind this, where you see the tool. So leave a little bit here for the tear duct. And then I'll just kind of lay it there gently and check to make sure I didn't get it too far up or anything. That looks good. Can you see that? It lines up.
Yep, got it.
All right, now we'll press it in. And we'll fill in under it.
Can you talk and sculpt at the same time?
Yeah.
I was just
Sort of.
curious, two questions on your collaborative work, because for most of us as artists, it's such a solitary profession. So how that feels to be working with another person. And my other question is, when you use personal artifacts, do you mourn the loss of them if the piece sells?
I'll answer that second one first. Yeah, you know that one of my mother's jewelry box? well, you had to have a price on it to put it in the show, but it's like, I will be fine if that doesn't sell. I'll just keep that. And I have another one that's got my mother's face. I'm like, no, I better just keep that. But it's I think the ones that are really personal to you, you just don't sell. And the other ones, it's like, I have so much stuff that it's okay to, it makes it an authentic piece that has a lot of emotion attached to it. That usually if somebody buys it, they get that, and they appreciate that. And as far as working with another person, yeah, it's, I couldn't work with just anybody. For some reason, it just works most of the time with Becky and I. It's, like I said, we've been friends for a long time. She has 2 girls. I have 2 boys. We both teach part-time and do our art, and we have stayed friends all these years. So we trust each other, and we also respect each other's personal art a lot. She's a really good painter. And so it's mostly trust, because there are many times where she'll do something and I'll go like, oh, I won't say it maybe, but I'll just go, oh, I'm not too sure. I don't know. And then I just have to kind of take a breath and, oh, yeah, that's right. That's the right thing to do, when she's working on a piece or something. And there's give and take. Sometimes we don't always agree, but, and, sometimes I do more on a piece, or sometimes she'll do more on a piece. But
Yeah, I wondered if you ever disagreed on the direction of a piece, because that would be really difficult, because it is so
Yeah.
personal.
Sometimes we do. And like we did this piece, and it was a really involved piece that was in that first show. It was kind of an installation with a big painting and these clay and fabric birds hanging in front of it, and this ironing board and this little clay figure on the ironing board. And to her, it was all about chaos. And she's like, her own art is very energetic. She kind of has a lot of influence of abstract expressionism. Her work is very, very energetic. She's a very outgoing, energetic person. And to me, that piece just was too chaotic. It just needed some order. So that was tricky, because we were coming from different aesthetics and different sort of life experiences. We did resolve it. You just have to kind of meet each other halfway. Maybe that's why I've been able to be married for 40 years, right, David?
Yeah. Also, I think the fact that they're doing shows, so you need to get a big body of work together.
Yeah, we usually only work when we have a show, because you have a deadline and motivation.
So if a piece isn't coming together, they just move on.
Yeah.
By the
We
way,
usually
thank
have
you
more work
to
than
your
we need.
cameraman today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. He also, before this, climbed up on the roof and put a big blanket over my skylight.
Whoa.
It was too much light. It was just washing everything out.
Wow. Well, yes, we appreciate the extra support for our demo today.
Yeah, that's really above and beyond.
Yeah, thank you.
So you can see what I'm doing here, like you saw on the other one. I don't necessarily have to fill that all in. I'm just filling in that, or fill it. I mean, I don't have to blend it necessarily, because we're about out of time. But this becomes that upper crease, and it can be as big or as little as you want it to be. So you would just keep filling that in, but you get the idea. And then that may need to come down a little bit right there. So I was kind of checking this angle, right? Brow, upper lid, lower lid. And then I'll go in and make a little line for the tear duct. This might need to come up a little Okay, so it's another way to do an eye. I'm just gonna show you, because I know we're pretty much out of time.
Jane, are these some of the techniques that you go over in the classes that you teach at Cheemer?
Yes. I almost always do the repoussé thing, either as a mask or on a head. And then we also will, like this little, we made this rabbit over here in my last class.
Oh, fun.
This is, we were kind of making figurative vessels.
Just hold them in your hand. Actually sits really nice.
Okay. And so this is 2 pinch pots put together for the body and a little lid, and another pinch pot for the head. And so sometimes we do heads using pinch pots for the human head as well, putting 2 together and adding some slabs and coiling the neck. And sometimes we do slab torsos. Sometimes I'll demonstrate a hand, how to make a hand or a foot. And so I made this pinch pot not too thin, because you want it to hold up, but you know, this could be, I was going to show you kind of a little how I do the rabbit face, but this could go on the wall, you know, as just a head. But the other way, like how I did that eye, I didn't carve the socket. I didn't really push it out from the back. Instead, it's more just pushing out the brow a little bit. You can just add a little bit of clay on the top too. It doesn't have to be in the eye socket. You can just add a little clay to start to create the eyeball. And then the eyelid was like one continuous coil. This is just kind of a quick and dirty, but I just had to go all the way around and then blended it in to create that eye.
Oh, I've
And that
never
ends
seen
up-
that before. That's really interesting.
And it ends up just like that.
Yeah, so you can see it better on there. And then I added clay for the
Wow.
brow. And then the other thing, one last little thing, if you have one of these Philippe Farreau eye making tools, they only make them in plastic now. This is the wood one. But you can go in and use it to create an eye. And it has 2 ends. One end is bigger and the other end is smaller.
And what was it? Where'd that tool come from?
You can get it off of his website, Philippe Farreau. He's a sculptor. He's in New York. And anyway, that kind of gives you the basic idea of what it looks like.
Speaking of websites, I'd like to remind everybody
Right
you
here.
can go to Kelsey-Mapel.com to see more of Jane's work. Do you also have where you're exhibiting on your website?
I do, but it's behind. If you keep up with, if you friend me on Facebook or Instagram, that's current. That's part of my website's really out of date. You'll see a lot of the earlier work, some of the work with the wire, but yeah. So ask me to friend me on Facebook.
You do
or
Facebook and Instagram, both?
Mhm. And I
Okay.
have Facebook, I have Jane Kelsey-Mapel, and I also have Jane Kelsey-Mapel Studio.
Okay.
And do you want to know how to spell Philippe Farreau?
Yeah, I'm trying to look it up.
Yeah, it's French. Philippe. Farraut is FARAUT.com.
FARAUT.
AUT.com. Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of a handy tool. And he calls it a sculpture tool, or they call it an eye tool. So good, I got all 3 eyes in.
I was going to show off a little bit.
Yay.
She's been playing with these images for a while. This piece here with the rabbit and the figure is over 30 years old. So
Yeah, I should do nothing in Texas. Right.
and though she didn't have figure in her MFA, she has done a lot of figure classes with different people and books and stuff.
And the classes at Scottsdale Art School. I actually teach a workshop at Scottsdale Art School. So I have the Shemer class coming up that'll be virtual, maybe in person at the MAC in January. And then in March, I have a 2-day weekend workshop at Scottsdale Art School. And we'll be doing a lot of these same techniques. And it's, like I said, it's just the weekend.
Marjorie wants to know, where do you take yoga?
Desert Song, but it's all by Zoom now. The Desert Song Yoga.
Nice.
Yeah, they have a lot of great teachers. Heidi's my favorite.
And they just moved.
Well, we don't know where they're going to be yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all online right now.
Your demo's been amazing, and you've gotten a lot in in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
And even that face, I just am amazed, like in 20 minutes, how it went from a slab of clay to a face. So that was,
yeah, it's fun to watch those things just come to life.
yeah. And you made it look so easy. Now I'm sure I can't replicate it that easy, but it was really neat to see your technique.
Good, thank you. Thanks. I knew I would have more to show than I would have time. That's okay.
Super enjoyable and fascinating.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We could probably do 2 hours just on hair next time.
We didn't even get to ears.
No, and they're hard.
I have a cool way to do ears.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jane. This was just fabulous. And thank you all for coming and joining us via Zoom. We have everybody in chat is saying, thank you, Jane. It's been
Thank you,
great.
Jane.
Everybody, a
You're
virtual round
welcome.
of applause for Jane.
Thanks for
Thank you
coming,
so-
everybody.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you so much. It was great. So, and you've been our last presenter
you.
for the season prior to our holiday event. So that's what a great last big presentation. So thank you. Thanks
Welcome.
again to your cameraman.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
David.
All right, everybody, and we'll see you next month on Zoom for look for the newsletter for more details on our virtual holiday party and ugly sweater contest.
Yeah.